welcome to the Ken McElroy Show. I'm your host, Danille, here with Ken.
Hey, guys. Happy Memorial Day. Today's a big day.
Yes, happy Memorial Day.
Yeah, my dad was in the Navy, so I come from a military family.
My grandparents were in the military.
Yeah. So today, obviously, everyone who fought and died, a lot of people. So happy Memorial Day. It's great to be here with you all.
Yeah, we decided to tune in live today, even though it's a holiday, just because we were doing some filming anyways. So we're like, well, let's just do the live, even though it's a holiday.
It's going to be good.
So just a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure you guys hit the like button. We always love that. And then secondly is I have a webinar with Jessica, and she is a first-time Airbnb owner. So her and her boyfriend, Nick, they have an Airbnb in Scottsdale, and they have been doing Airbnb for about 3 months, and they've learned a lot.
Yeah, this is a good one for you guys.
Months.
There's a lot of people talking about doing this. They're basically taking homes they live in.
Yep.
And going somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then renting their own personal home. So this is a thing, especially as things are tightening, inflation's hitting, and people are looking for other income. So there's some real lessons
Well,
here.
and they're killing it on cash flow, but they've just learned a lot. So if you are thinking about doing Airbnb, if you're curious about Airbnb, a rental, or your own home, this Wednesday, 5 o'clock Arizona time, I think we're on Pacific time now, it's going to be me and Jessica, and she is entertaining and going to have a lot of good stories, you guys.
Some good stories.
I mean, she's had everything from girls passed out into the front yard to, people not being able to open the back door. So
it's going to be fun.
Exactly. So make sure you guys tune in. It's free. So also we have Limitless next weekend.
Yeah, gosh, guys. So I think we're sold out. Thank you all. Those of you who are coming, I can't wait. I've been working on this for, as you guys know, nonstop. So is my amazing partner, Tarl. So we are expecting a full house, man. I tell you what. And it's going to be entrepreneurship and real estate, of course. But we've got some. George Gammon's been texting me all morning, but he's changing his topic, and he's going to talk to you guys about the economy. We're gonna talk about where we think things are going. And then we got all the rich advisors there, Kiyosaki. We got Mark Victor Hansen and his beautiful wife coming the next day. He's, of course, Chicken Soup of the Soul and Rich Dad Poor Dad, for those of you guys know. So those are two amazing brands. So
yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun.
It's going to be a blast. So here, right in Scottsdale at the Westin.
And it's going to be an annual event.
Yeah, it's www.limitlessexpo.com, and we'll see you guys there.
Okay, so today, what everyone wants to know is we're going to talk about the housing market and is it slowing down and what that means.
I know. It's a big deal. I understand the question, and the answer is, of course, yes.
Yeah, it's definitely slowing down. I mean, how could it not be, right? We have mortgage rates going up really quickly. The Fed's saying they're going to keep doing that. And then we also had a huge price increase over the past 2 years. So that price increase was unsustainable to continue. Yeah.
So you guys, one of the things to watch, and I'm actually going to do a learning video on this, is you can watch the rents as they go up. And that's kind of what all the politicians and everyone are focused on, is our rents. And I understand why. Affordability is getting out of control, and homelessness is a big thing. But the other thing now, in just the last few months, are mortgage payments. So, as prices of homes are pretty close to $400,000 on the average for the United States. I think it's $380 last time I looked. But rates have gone up. Let's just say from 3 to 4 to 5%.
They're like 5.5 now.
Okay. So that's going to put a $400,000 home right around $1,900 a month, depending on what your down payment is, and that's not including taxes and insurance and capital, reserves and all that kind of stuff. So you're looking at pretty close to $3,000 a month, certainly in the mid-high 2000s. And so as you start to compare that with rent, you're going to see more people pushing down into rentals. So the affordability, there's two things. One, you need your down payment for the house, but two, as these costs go up, these $100 a month, per family, people are going to stay where they are.
When people are getting squeezed,
That's
right?
what I mean.
So yeah, so on the down payment, even if it starts to level off, they're going to still have a harder time coming up with it. And then obviously the monthly payment, because if their monthly payment is going to be more or similar to the rental payment, it disincentivizes them to really buy.
Yeah, and if you look at savings rates, which is also something that you should be watching, they're going down. So they've gone down since January. So what does that mean? That means people are getting squeezed by food and fuel and just everyday things. Certainly, I don't know about you guys who try to fly anywhere. My gosh,
Expensive.
it's like you can't even get a plane ticket for under $500 round trip. It seems, and thousands now kind of more of the standard. So all these things are happening. So what's happening is people are dipping into their savings, which is, of course, what the whole point of saving is to use that for a down payment on something. So as these savings rates and these savings accounts are being dipped into, then people are going to have less and less for their down payment, and then as prices go up, they're going to, of course, those down payments are going up.
Yeah, and let's kind of go through. So when the market slows down, there's a process around it, right?
Yep.
So, to start, the number of offers are going down. So that's always how it starts, right? Number of offers, and that is happening. The overbidding stops too because you have less offers. So before, if you wanted to buy a $400,000 house, you'd have to open a bid with $450 to even be qualified. If you just went in at $4 the day it opened, you wouldn't even really be nixed off, right?
And we got caught up in that, on some things. Yeah,
we did. Yeah, we bought some.
Yeah. I'm happy with what we bought, but we were part of this. I mean, we bought a couple places.
It made sense for us, but we were paying over the asking price.
We turned them into rentals that cash flow, so we still follow that same model. But the point is that if something was listed, there were in the few that we had, there were 10, 20 offers within
a day.
In the first day. Yeah, and so there's a lot of strategy around that. Yeah,
and then the homes start sitting longer, right? So right now, I think the average day homes are sitting are 10 to 11 days. Before it was like less than that.
Not many.
Now the average normally is like 30 some days.
Yeah, and the other thing is, one really good leading indicator, of course, are mortgage applications. So mortgage applications are way down, and that's a result. You can't increase interest rates without something slowing down, period. So that's what's happening. And I think we're going to continue to see that as the Fed meets again in mid-June, I think June 14th, 15th, and then they meet again in July, like 24th, 25th, somewhere in there. So they meet again 2 more times by the end of July.
Right. And lastly, in the cycles, you have a price decline, right? Which we have not seen yet. We're not seeing prices decline. We're just seeing the buying slow down.
But if you look at the average, that's true. But there are markets that they've gone down.
Okay. Yeah. And I spoke to our realtor, Alyssa, that we love this morning, because she has a pretty good handle on the Scottsdale market. And she said right now there was about 2,000 to 3,000 homes available for sale in Scottsdale. That's up to 5,000.
So it's doubled.
Yes, but the average is 10. So it's still halfway from
average. Yeah.
And she said that inspections are back. Was her
Good.
thing.
All right.
So
people can
now are now doing inspections again, and they're asking the sellers to fix things, because before it was no inspection, nothing to fix, just we'll take it as is. But now inspections are back, and sellers are being required to fix things because the market's a little bit tighter.
So if you look, there are some coastal markets specifically. I know Seattle, Portland, San Francisco are all down if you take a look at year over year. And in some cases, the prices are below the 17, 18 numbers. So now, as we start talking about these individual markets, just know that real estate is not a national market. Right. It's very, very specific. What's interesting is as you were talking, I think you have to pay attention to the small things that are changing. So mortgage applications are down. Home inspections are back. Buyers are asking sellers to pay for things. So these were very normal a couple years ago. Right. But now, as they start, this is how it starts. And the next thing you'll see, if supply grows, then you'll start to see prices taper off and potentially decline.
Yeah, and something else that we're seeing that I think is interesting is adjustable rate mortgages have gone up. They were at 3% of all mortgages. They're now at 11% of all mortgages are adjustable rate.
No.
Yep. So those are going way up because people are not able to afford a fixed rate loan, and so that's, so we have some riskier behavior happening that I think we have to monitor because
That's like
that is
hard
what
money.
happened in '08.
That's interesting.
But the thing with crashes is that what you guys have to realize is there's a really slow process, right? So this is some beginning indicators. Does not mean anything's going to be happening in the immediate future here as far as a crash in the market, if that even were to happen.
Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with using debt, but if it's really based on the next quarter or next year's prices going up, then that's a really bad strategy. So if it's covered debt, so you're going to be okay. But as these debt costs go up, then now you might be pushed out of normal cash flow scenarios, and so this could further create problems. I have to go into this and take a look at these more, but if you have adjustables now, that means that your adjustable rate is going up based on whatever, deal you had at the time.
But something that, you have to consider, right, is everyone's looking at, okay, mortgage rates are going up and less people are buying, but we still have a supply issue. So we didn't have a supply issue in 2008, and we didn't have an inflation issue in 2008.
I know.
But we do now, and that's really going to affect a crash.
You're absolutely right. We do have an affordability problem. So that's the new problem. And what that's going to do, unfortunately, it's going to push people into rentals. And that's what it's either one, people are going to stay put because they might have a lot of equity in their home, but they can't trade it out because if they make a lateral move, their payment's going to be a lot more because of the interest rates. So I predict that there's going to be a lot more people that are going to stay put. Home Depot and Lowe's and all those big home improvement, what they've already done very, very well during the pandemic, they're going to get a big boom because people are going to now, they're going to scoop some of that equity potentially, depending on the rates, and spend it on the places they live in. But the other thing is we talk a lot about this, and I did a video on this a while ago called Renter Nation. I really strongly believe that this could be it. We could seriously go into what's called a Renter Nation. And if you take a look at the demographics, these are just like the millennials. The millennials are now starting to get ready to buy houses and to start families and all those kinds of things. And they've been doing it. But if you look at the trends, we have like a 1.5 million potential demand.
Right.
Just take a look at that. So we're not supplying near that kind of housing, guys. First of all, we have a housing shortage already, but then you have this big demand coming. So you have to look at what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years as people, settle in wherever they're going to settle in, decide to get married, have kids, and all that kind of stuff. And these are indicators that have been going on forever, whether it's Gen Z or baby boomers, or it doesn't really matter. There are consequences to births, deaths, families, all that kind of stuff. So you got to pay attention to these ripple effects. And one of the big ones that everyone's watching, hopefully you is the millennial demand. And so this is really going to, and this kind of goes back into your issue, what you were just saying around supply. I still think we're going to have a massive supply issue.
Well, because construction, it's hard right now to build with supply and labor. And then it's also expensive to build. So these new builds coming out, they can't sell for less than it costs to build them.
Well, they're not going to. Plus, there's going to be a profit. So you got all these construction costs are up, labor's up. And most of these home builders are not. Of course, it'd be crazy to lock in a price if you're buying new.
Right.
And so you are kind of gambling too. What's the price of that house going to be at the time we have to close? And of course, mortgage rates are up as well. So you have all of that kind of stuff.
Okay. And then also with that upwards rent, you're going to have, properties cash flow. So it's going to be a good investment for people. So that's also going to keep the price of the market up as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So
Plus, you can't discount the fact that the government wants to prop up the mortgage market. So George Gammon said something interesting yesterday. He said, people hate the consumer goods and things like that are inflating, but they love that the assets are inflating. People don't want their house to crash. They don't want their house to be worth, a third less than it is right now. So the politicians are incentivized on both sides to keep the housing market.
He was in our studio, Jerry. We got a video of him coming out on Wednesday. So you guys want to see something great, George? We did a pretty good video with him. It's coming out on Wednesday, and he went into this in detail. And of course, he'll be at Limitless, which we're excited about. But you're right. They don't want it.
Right.
Inflation's going to be what it's going to be, and they want it in asset prices, but they don't want it in consumer goods.
Right. And so the government, wants to prop up the mortgage market, right? So he was telling me about something they're doing in Australia, which I thought was really interesting. So it's proposed. They haven't done it yet, but they're saying that to combat housing prices, the government's going to buy 40% of your mortgage in Australia. So you just have to come up with the down payment on the 60% of it. And then you pay them back the 40% once the house sells. But the problem with that is that if it does not, two problems with that. One, if it doesn't appreciate, then you're going to owe the government money. But two is that that just propels housing prices higher because now people only have to come up with a 60% down payment.
So I've seen this before in the U.S.
In the U.S.?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've seen different counties and cities kind of roll out programs to where basically this is a way to get people into housing. And so there are government programs that usually they're nonprofits, but it sounds like the government might be getting into this as well. But it essentially just lowers people's down payments. I'm actually not against it because at the end of the day, if you can get in and with a lower down payment and start building your equity, don't forget the payment does pay down the principal. So, as you're paying your mortgage or your rent, you're better off paying a mortgage against a principal, and you're growing your own equity just by your monthly payments. So you're right to your point. But if you're in something long term, who cares, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully you're getting the tax benefits. You're growing your equity through your payment down, and then every once in a while, over time, you're going to have an increase.
A fan said, "No thanks on the government helping buy my house. That's communism waiting to spring out from under the floorboards."
That's awesome.
Exactly.
I did think
if you
about
don't do
that.
this,
Yeah,
then
I
you lose your
know,
house. If you don't
yeah.
do that. But anyways,
Well, if they'll forgive student loans, maybe they'll forgive the mortgage.
exactly, right? So the interesting thing is through all this, so through the Fed lowering the mortgages down to, almost 2.5% or whatever, they have made the real asset the mortgage. So it's not really the house that's the asset, it's the mortgage. So that's going to really, really kick their butt on supply, because if you have a home right now and you want to upgrade to a bigger home like people do, and you have a 2.5% mortgage on it, you do not want to sell that. Well, you might not move because, like you said, if you can't afford. But if you can afford to, you're not going to sell it. That's a 2.5% debt. So you could rent it, figure something out. But they're really kick their butt on people not wanting to list and lose the asset, which is the mortgage.
No, that's a really, really good point. Anybody who has mortgages under 3 are disincentivized to make a move on the asset.
Yeah. I mean, why would you? I mean, I have that. I have like $200,000 in debt on at 2.5% or 2.6%, and I'll never pay that off.
Yeah.
I mean, I would buy. I can't ever sell that condo because it's just so cheap.
I know. Now it looks like it, but at the time, which is just a few years ago, you were just looking at the basic economics. But so you're right. That is exactly right. Even though they have a lot of equity in those homes, you'd be crazy to get rid of those low-cost mortgages.
Exactly.
And that rate of debt is going to keep people in place. It certainly does on the commercial side too. Yeah.
And people are saying, so should you buy in this market? So that's the question everybody wants to know right now is, should you buy? And the answer is, it depends.
Well, yeah. But let's get a little more detail on that, because I'm still buying, and I'm buying in markets that make sense financially based on math. So everything I do is based on math. We just bought last week. Well, we closed last week on a $58 million deal. It was a $30 million value add. And so it was built in the 80s. Hadn't really been touched. Actually, hadn't been touched. And so we're just merely upgrading the units, and we're going to get organically, anywhere, $300, $400, $500 of rent growth in those individual units, which translates into a value add. So, if you're trying to buy something and time the market, then I would be careful. That's really, really, really risky because you got two things happening. One, we don't know where asset prices are going to go. Two, we don't know where interest rates are going to go. Don't forget, the Fed's going to meet 2 more times by the end of July. So, rates are up already. Mortgage prices are up already. The other thing that we really haven't seen really impact are all the operating costs of owning real estate. I mean, everybody's talking about it, but you're going to start to see property tax increases. You're going to start to see insurance costs go up. You're going to start to see energy costs. We're already seeing energy costs go up. And don't forget, as a landlord, you pay for water, sewer, trash, electric, all that kind of stuff. And if you could pass it on your tenant, great. But if you can't, it's yours depending on what kind of real estate you have. So
yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. So all of those things, not to mention the labor. So you got an air conditioner or an appliance that goes out or whatever. Those are all real things from a landlord standpoint that we're dealing with at the moment, and all those costs are up. I mean, just labor is significantly up, per hour.
Yeah, and this is for the red states and the blue states. So sometimes I think people think, okay, I'm in a red state, so my property taxes aren't going to go up and this isn't going to go up. But every state needs money right now, and they're not making it in the same ways they used to. So we're going to expect that even in Arizona for our property taxes to go up.
Yeah. And so a big way, there's multiple ways, obviously, that cities, states, counties pay for things. And one massive way are property taxes. If you really dig into your property tax bill, you'll see that they pay for the local schools, they pay for local police and fire, and a number of other things. So, I don't want to minimize, what they are because every place is just a little bit different. And to your point, the other way are, which people hate, the pro-development stuff. So when you build something somewhere, they charge development fees. They charge developers to hook up, and so they're weighing the math. Even though you might not like to see that new apartment building or that new shopping center or whatever it is, the tax revenues, the sales tax revenues from the people shopping in those places, the amount of money that is generated from a local corner, let's say from a grocery store or apartment building or whatever, is significant to a community. And so they're either paid from the tenant or they're paid from the landlord. But either way, the city, state, county all looks at that as potential revenue. So they take their piece before you build it. They take their piece while you own it.
Yes. And just to switch gears really quick, I have the webinar coming up with Jessica on Wednesday. She is a first-time Airbnb owner. I want to recap. She's renting her own house. And so she's going to recap some great stories and tips for those of you looking to get started in Airbnb. She does not have a secondary property. This is her own home. She's Airbnb-ing.
It's called a trailer.
It's kenmcroy.com/webinar to sign up. Also, hit the like button. Really helps us out as you're watching. Would love to try to get over 150 likes here. All right. So, first-time homeowners, though, what do you recommend they do? Because that's confusing right now for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I always say you got to first start with where do you want to be, and I think this is important. So, scratch the whole investment thing. So, and you have a lot of choices, especially today, depending on what kind of income you have coming in. If it's passive, you have a lot of choices. If it's active, which means that you're working for a paycheck somewhere and you have to go in every day, your choices are a lot less. So, but the first thing is find out where you want to be. So, that's very, very, very important. Then I think that you got to chase affordability, weather, safety, and all those kinds of things. And you got to weigh in things like property taxes and insurance costs and utility costs and all those kinds of things. The one thing people don't realize, there's a lot of movement to Florida and Texas, and Arizona. I own in those markets. The property taxes in Texas have always been really high, and the utility costs are pretty good. Insurance costs along the Gulf are very high. Florida insurance is out of control because it keeps getting hit by hurricanes and all these other things. Now, these are nuances I understand, but if you're going to buy somewhere, you have to take a look at the costs of actually owning something somewhere. So there are things that go on, and every city and every municipality has different costs. So you got to look at all of those things. But if I was somebody that was a first time and I had complete freedom of where I would go, I would probably go to Texas, North Carolina, Florida, or Arizona. And because those markets appear to me that they're going to have the biggest lift, and I still think there's a lot of affordability in those markets. I mean, you can still buy an amazing home just outside of Phoenix for $400,000 or $500,000. Something really, really nice, and you can't do that in other places. That's just, of course, I'm biased, but I'm also looking at affordability, and so I think you got to take a look at the whole picture if you have the flexibility. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and it's funny because we're getting some comments on the YouTube right now, but I think a lot of people are trying to wait as a first-time home buyer for a crash. And the problem with that is two things. One, your rent is going to keep going up. So unless you're living with your parents or your landlord and you're getting some special deal, your rent is going to keep going up with inflation. Secondly, we don't know where the top or bottom of the market is. So even if there is a slight slowdown, that doesn't mean the market's not going to continue to grow. It doesn't mean it's going to crash. You might be waiting for a crash for 10 years or more before, and you might never see a crash like you did in 2008. I think because 2008 happened, everybody's waiting for the next 2008, and that's going to be their big time to get a home. And that might not happen for 50 years, crash like that. So you really, if you can afford the payment and it's similar to what you're paying for rent or cheaper, then it makes sense to buy.
I agree. Yeah, it's, guys, if anybody, there are a lot of signs that we're in a massive asset bubble. I get that. But one of the things that you cannot dispute is the fact that we're severely undersupplied in housing, and there's a big demand coming. Those are facts. So we just don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of factors that unlike in 2008, which I went through, this was very, very different. What was happening is you could fog a mirror and get a mortgage. And so the lending is much more diligent this time around. But asset prices are high and rates are going up. So we're definitely going to see a slowdown. So the first thing that's going to happen is just normalcy. We're just going to get back to the way the housing market should act. And we don't know how high rates are going to go. And that's the other piece. If you're renting and you're waiting for a housing crash, we could see higher mortgage rates. And we could, even if, let's just say houses stay the same price, the payment could be a lot more.
Right. And it's something interesting. So Repurpose You said, no, absolutely, we will see a dollar collapse that's going to be worse than 2008. And my response to that is if we really do see a dollar collapse and crazy high inflation, buying now, that would help people that own real estate. So if you bought a house for $400,000 and we really had a dollar hyperinflation or something like that, then $400,000 will be much easier paid off in the future dollars than today's dollars.
So let me just challenge that a little bit. So I actually asked this question to George Gammon, and he believes, and it's convincing, that the one thing that the government is very, very afraid of is a dollar collapse because we're the world's reserve currency. Mm-hmm. So he believes that's why gold has been suppressed. It's because they're trying to keep the dollar propped up. So... but certainly the dollar probably should be crashing because it's been untethered for so long. from gold, and it's been a fiat currency, and they're just printing the heck out of it, and they're devaluing it. But don't forget that things are bought and sold around the world with dollars, and we are the world's reserve currency. The rest of the world is pissed because if we pay somebody $1 and then we inflate it away, the dollars that we've paid them have been devalued. So, which is why, if you really dig down, why Russia is basically going screw you. Obviously there's other reasons that Russia's behaving very badly, but they're now accepting rubles and gold, and there's all kinds of stuff happening right now around the payment system. I don't want to get into the sanctions and all that kind of stuff, but the point is, I'm not sure the dollar, the government, that might be the number one thing, in my opinion, according to George. The number one thing is that the U.S. really gets hurt if the dollar crashes. So almost everything is per him, is angled on keeping the dollar strong or not so weak where it crashes. So that's his reason for that gold hasn't had the run. Because if you reprice gold based on what it should be, some say it should be $11, $12, $15,000 an ounce, and right now it's hovering right around $2. So it's a complex issue.
So Saprexo wants to know, he said, are you saying that you disagree with George on that home prices? So I guess George believes that home prices will eventually go back to being priced as the same as real wages and incomes.
So I'd have to watch George's video, and I'll actually ask him this question. But here's what I believe. I believe that we have a massive shortage of housing. I know that for a fact. Let's just call it 5 million, whatever the number is. And I also know that if you look at the demand, let's look at the Goldman report that came out around what the millennials are going to do for demand over the next 5 to 10 years. We're going to be trying to get a 1.5 million housing need, period. So you have a shortage, plus you have that future demand, and then you got to weigh it with supply, period. So because of those things, I believe that we're going to see a massive increase in rent. I don't see a housing collapse, but I do see a housing slowdown. And typically, think about what makes a housing market collapse. It's foreclosures or oversupply. Okay. So it's possible we see some foreclosures. We're obviously they're up from the pandemic and all that, but what happened in '08 was an oversupply, and people moved into rentals. Right now, there's still a massive undersupply.
So that's a good point. Why do you think there was an oversupply in '08 and there's an undersupply now?
Interest rates and building. So if you take a look at if you look at the last 10 years, there hasn't been a lot of new supply. This is important. And why is that? And then you look at the prior 10 years, go back 20 years, demand was met with supply. That's what happened. So if you go back 20 years, you'll see the first 10, we pretty much we're keeping up with demand, which kind of keeps everything in balance. Then crash, let's say, let's just say 08, 9, 10, banks were not lending, people were not building. We were going through, call it the ripple effects from that crash. Since then, people have been riding on this shortage. That's actually been the issue. It's not because they're smart. Well, they're smart because they timed the market. But the real issue has been rates have gone down, and we continue to have a shortage, and we haven't really caught up. So that's where I think it's heading. The one thing we need, Biden's got a new affordability plan. He just popped out about last week. I don't know if it'll work, but they're talking about manufactured housing and mobile homes and all that kind of stuff to try to start to add supply. So the government has acknowledged that we have an affordability issue. That's why there might be markets that crash, though, so don't get me wrong. There are already prices declining in some markets, but there are other markets that are still rising like crazy. So I just don't see the crash because I went through it in 08, 9, 10 like I do now. You have to have that overbuild factor.
So Justin has an interesting comment. He said, is there a way to verify housing supply? Because I've seen videos from 07, 08 where Bernanke said back then we had a shortage, which is obviously wasn't the case.
Yeah, it's actually the St. Louis Fed. They have a great website. It shows supply added and all of that, and you can track it. It's a fantastic resource. It's also all over the internet. You can look year by year by year by year, and see how many housing units have been added. So that's where I go.
Plus, a lot of people are now doing rentals. So I feel like the rental business, mom and pop wise, is way more popular than it was back then because more people know about it.
It's going to get the next few years, guys. If you own stuff, you're going to do really well. I mean that. Like, you're going to do really, really, really well. You're going to see people cannot afford to own a home because of mortgages and rising costs. And they're going to be forced to go into rentals, and you're going to see a massive rental growth because of the lack of supply.
Yep. And Vape King says BlackRock and Vanguard are buying up a lot of homes too.
Yeah.
You know, so and they're never going to sell those homes back to the average home buyer.
It's that whole piece is that's a whole video. The real estate investors, not just them, are scooping up inventory, and it's disrupting. This is all new. And the one thing about Blackstone and Vanguard, however, is because I used a lot of managed money before, and as you guys know, I actually was in escrow with Blackstone, so I do know the company well. I was in an NDA with them, and we were going to do some stuff with them. But the point is, they want their money back. So what that means is, if they invest in something, they have to sell in order to reap that return. So let's say they bought a bunch of houses at $250,000 on the average, and now they're at $350,000. If they don't sell some of those, then they don't get the profit. Period. So they're going to have to scoop the equity at some point. So some of these big institutions are going to have to sell. They could be buying at the same time. It's dollar cost averaging is all it is, except they're doing it in houses. So you're going to see sales from these big institutions soon. I don't know how they're going to dump them. I don't know how they're going to roll them out. The point is, the only way they're not making money on the rentals, guaranteed.
Right.
So they're buying it on the equity, and they're going to have.
Well,
to
that's
sell.
just how the institutional money does it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So that is something to watch.
Yes.
Definitely.
So we are now going to go into our premium questions from our Inner Circle members.
Okay.
If you guys want to join Ken's Inner Circle, just go to kensinnercircle.com. And there you can sign up. You can ask Ken questions. We have a lot of resources on there. It's an awesome group. So our first question comes from Mark. So Mark wants to know, do you recommend a property manager for one single family home?
No, I don't. Well, first of all, if you don't have time, then sure. But what are you looking at? You're looking at $150, $200 a month. A lot of it's going to depend on your cash flow, number one. If you have a lot of cash flow and you don't have the time and you live somewhere else, then yes. But if you have the time, do it. It's really not that complicated. I want you to talk about this. You did it for the first 1, 2. When you got to about 3, that's when you started freaking out a little bit.
Yeah, 3's a little bit more work. I'm at 4 now, and 4, I'm still doing it myself. I have a girl that helps me a little bit on some of the things, but I don't hire a property manager.
But also look at your learning curve.
I've learned so much.
Obviously,
I don't think you need it for one. My neighbor, a good friend of mine, she hired it for one, and you just pay a big fee. And honestly, if you get a good tenant in there, it's easy. Like every couple months, maybe they have a service call of some sort you have to deal with. But as long as you're not, it depends on your personality too. If you're someone that is working 60 hours a week and you cannot handle one more thing, then you should hire should hire somebody. Yep. But if you're just a person that has time for, a problem every couple months. And by the problem, I just mean having to call an air conditioning guy, or having to call a plumber, or having to, go make an extra key made that they can pick up. As long as you have time to do that every couple months, then you're totally fine. And also your stress profile, right? So as long as you can handle conflict and handle telling somebody their rent's due and telling somebody that that's not covered. Now, if you're somebody that just wants to avoid all conflict and you can't handle it, then you can pay somebody 10% to manage your rental. It's just going to be a really easy job for them and expensive for you.
Yeah, that's good advice.
So Omar says, is buying multifamily properties still a smart and profitable move considering current inflation and rising home prices?
So again, I hate to say, it depends, but it does depend. So, I personally would not be buying in many, many, many markets. So, is multifamily, can it be a great investment? 1,000%. If you could find a 2, 4, 8, 10, 12, 50, 100 unit project that makes sense financially, where the rent is more than paying for your operating costs and your cash flowing, then yes. And we're still finding deals like that. They're very, very, very hard to find, especially at 200 units and up like we're doing. But the cool part about real estate is it's actually not very smart, and it's very inefficient. So you might be in a little market, I don't know where you're looking, but where you've got a lot of demand for rentals. There aren't any, and there's not a lot of competition that you have. So I'm finding some really, really, really good stories of people that are on these super cool little niche markets that are still buying and doing really, really well. And don't forget, multifamily is a 2, 4, 8 unit. Those are still multifamily. So, even though I focus on the bigger stuff, the one thing is for sure, I was looking at this morning because I'm doing a learning video a little bit later. The cost to build multifamily, the cost to build single family is so high right now that if you can buy something, you should be looking at it on a per pound basis. So what does that mean? What that means is if you're buying a 4-unit building, let's say, for $800,000 or $200,000 a door, you got to look at the replacement cost. It's probably closer to $300,000 a door. So you're looking at $1.2 million to build a 4-plex, and you can buy it at $800,000. Even though it's not brand new, you got to take a look at all of those things. So that's how we look at things. We look at what's the cost to build, what's the cost to buy. So that's why, as you guys know, I've been buying in Austin. We bought in Austin at $180,000 a door, which is, it would be double, literally double for me to build that. Today at that spot in Austin with the land and the impact fees and all this stuff to build. So, this is garage, 9-foot ceilings. It's 15 years old, but the point is it's a beautiful project that just needs some injection of capital. So you have to look at your what it's going to cost to build and what it's going to cost to buy. And if you can make the math work, then do it.
Sarah on YouTube said something interesting. She said, I do believe people buy into the hype the last 18 months and they don't have a clue what they're doing. So I do think, as the market starts to correct, we talk about this a lot with Airbnb, right? A lot of people buy Airbnbs, properties on the Airbnb cash flow. And what can happen is the city can come in and decide you can't do Airbnbs anymore. And then they're screwed. Or people could have bought assuming that they're in hard money, or they're in a mortgage where they need to get out of it because they need to sell their home for a lot more than they bought it for. And they're screwed as well. So we do agree that there's some people that did some riskier buying patterns, or maybe some people that are flipping right now with construction costs and labor costs, that they're not going to get the big increase that they've been getting. So they could be screwed as well. So there's definitely people in that category.
And I've seen this before, guys. So I've been in the business since the late 80s when I first got out of university. And what happens is when you start to see these flippers, with Rolls Royces and Lambos and shit on, on these social media, that you should be raising an eyebrow because, all they've ever seen is a market going up, and they think, look how smart I am. And guess what'll happen? As Buffett says, we see who's swimming naked when the tide goes out. So, depending, it will be very, very interesting to see what happens with all of those folks.
Yeah. So our next question comes from Robert. So this is a good one. I know that those of you that own things have been approached for this. So I have been approached to add solar panels. Can you advise me on the pros and cons?
Yeah. So I haven't seen the payback work yet. So we obviously look at these. It typically is even though, so they always say, hey, we're going to give you, it won't cost you anything, we haven't found a way for it to make sense financially. We've been looking at putting them on our carports, and the best we've been able to see is that we can get our pool and get our pool and some of our hot water heated. That's about it. Don't forget, in rentals, the tenants pay for electric.
Right.
So so really what you're saving is your common area electric. So for solar.
So if you're putting it on a house, it makes no sense at all because you're really just saving your tenants some money potentially.
Correct.
But if you're putting it on a multifamily, just the common areas.
So yeah, so and it's my understanding the technology continues to get better and better and better each year too. So if you would have gotten a solar, let's say install 5 years ago, you just like your laptop, the technology has changed so much. I don't know enough about it but I do know that every time we've looked at it, it hasn't made sense for us financially.
Well, it depends where you live too, because if you're from where I'm from, Akron, Ohio, it doesn't make you're not going to get much sunshine there. So
that's right.
Okay. So the next one's from Casey. And it says, Ken, I'm currently building 28 units and will be done and stabilized by the end of the year.
Nice.
With everything going on in the world, would you keep it and weather the storm that is about to come, or would you sell it and use the capital once everything has gone on sale?
I would keep those things. Now, one thing, I don't know if it's one big project or multiple ones, but so there's a couple strategies that you have. One is get out of that construction debt. So that'd be the first thing. And get that thing stabilized as quickly as you can. I'm sure you did all the numbers beforehand. If they're all over the place, you might want to take a look at a hybrid model. In other words, maybe you sell off 8 or 6 or 8 of them, and you have a little bit of cash, and you keep, let's say, 20 of them, or something like that. But if it's all one project, honestly, I would hold. I would fix that, especially if you're almost. I don't know what kind of debt you have, but that's important. And I would fix that debt. Take a look at the math. Take a look at what your rentals costs your rental prices are going to be based on your stabilized income and stabilized expenses, and then make your decision from there. But don't forget, you're going to pay a big capital gain number, and you're going to be sitting in cash with these, call it 8% inflation. I think you're better off in a hard asset if you take a look at when you calculate tax and loss of opportunity, because if you sell at the top, you're also trying to buy at the top. So congrats on getting that. You must have been working on that a couple of years. So
yeah, and
congrats to you.
Yeah, the thing is, Casey, is we don't know that the multifamily market is going to crash. I mean, if rents keep going up,
I don't think it is.
You might not, maybe a long time before you.
We're undersupplied.
Everything
Casey.
goes on sale.
We're undersupplied.
Yeah.
Keep those things. You'll be happy you asked that question in 5 years. Trust me.
Sam from our inner circle says, currently saving for our next property, but starting to doubt I should hold the money in a bank account. Would it be more advantageous to hold it as silver as a hedge against inflation until we're ready to buy? The only problem I'm seeing with this is the bank requests 3 months of bank statements, and large deposits from selling the silver could trigger a flag.
Yeah. So first of all, silver or gold, I don't really look at as investments. I look at it as kind of a hedge against the dollar. I'm kind of in the same camp as George. We talked about this. I think that the government's afraid that we're going to have a dollar collapse, and I think that that's really what this is all about. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because if the dollar does collapse, then there's a whole bunch of things that go wrong. They got the stock market, the housing market, the bond market, the crypto market. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that is going to go up, the crypto. But the point is, there's problems with that. So I do have an allocation for gold, an allocation for silver, and I'm also heavy in cash. I do believe you need cash for heading into what I believe is going to be a recession. So, you want to. It's a fine balance, and especially if you have to have that liquidity, like the banks require of me. I have to have a lot of cash too in order to be able to get credit and loans and stuff like that. So but I would not probably take a chunk of that and jump into silver at this point, especially if it hurts your banking scenario. And also, we don't know where silver's going to go.
Right.
It's really outside of my pay grade is to figure out where silver and gold's going to go. But I'm in those things because I diversify. So I do think you do need to diversify into, oil and gas and silver and even some crypto and gold and real estate and some businesses. And you need to have all these things and not be all in one thing. And you also have to have cash. Cash is going to be your friend during this recession.
So Suprexo has a good question on YouTube. They said, do you see a possibility of rental income property going up while I guess the income on the property is going up, but the cost of the property is going down? Is that a function of stagflation?
So I don't see costs going down.
Mm-hmm.
So I do see rental income going up, but I don't see costs going down. So
because that wouldn't really make any sense.
No, well, it's a good question. You can have costs going down on something that you find that somebody's maybe not doing a good job managing, but I don't really see costs going down. I've been in this business a long time, and I've watched nothing but costs go up. And the question is which one's going up faster?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully income's going faster than expenses. This is why I'm really afraid of buying in markets that have rent caps or rent control, because basically the government is saying that your income can only grow this much, but you can't really, they're not capping your expenses. So you just got to watch both of them.
So I think that that's a good answer, but I think you misunderstood the question.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think that what they're saying is, do you see the rents going up, but the price of the buildings going down?
No.
Okay.
No. Because remember, the price of the building is made up of the components of the building. So appliances, this is why being in hard assets is important. Now, the price of a building or the value of a building is definitely based on the operations of the building. So let me give you an example. If you find a vacant building on a corner of Main and Main, it doesn't really matter where it is. It's going to be a certain number price, but it's going to be less money if it's vacant. If you put a tenant in it, it's worth more. That's as simple as it is. So with the building with a tenant is worth more than a building without a tenant, period. So that's what I'm talking about. So you have to look at the whole picture, but it's a good question.
So our next question comes from Ben, and we had some questions on YouTube similar to this. He said, I have read that 10 million people in the U.S. have a second house that could come back to the market if the right conditions were present, such as a recession. Also, the Fed is talking about selling some of its mortgage-backed securities. If there's supposed to be a 5 million housing deficit in the USA, could those 10 million homes coming to market affect the current housing market?
Oh, for sure, yeah. If using all your hypotheticals, the answer is yes. That would just be an increase in supply. You got to take a look at people's second homes. If people have second homes, you got to take a look at what kind of home it is. So it'll affect that market. But I can't imagine that that scenario doesn't sound like it's going to happen. In a recession, you might have people selling their second homes if they're getting squeezed somewhere else for sure, and second and third homes, and because they need the cash for other things because they're bleeding somewhere. So if they're not bleeding anywhere, like maybe their company went out of business, or maybe their stock portfolio went down to zero, or whatever it is, or they're heavy in crypto, then yes. So you have to look at the whole picture. I think that's going to drive that second home market.
But you also have to look at the asset of the mortgage, right? So even on second homes, the mortgages were very inexpensive during this time. So if they refinanced and they're able to do, an Airbnb on that property, because most of your second homes are going to be in very places that people want to live typically. So you have to look at that too. Or does it make more sense for them to sell it, or does it make more sense for them to rent it? And that's going to be a factor as well.
So in 08 and 09 and 10, basically, it was based on the person's individual circumstance. So if they were in the mortgage business, and I knew a lot of people in the mortgage business during that time, and then they were out of business because they were living the high life while they were, making commissions on putting all these mortgages out, and then it went down to nothing. And the banks weren't lending. Then I knew people that had second and third houses and country clubs and big nice cars and all that kind of crap. And they sold everything they could just to survive. So it's going to depend a lot on the individual person's circumstance, I believe. Well, I went through the same thing, and I've had up to 3 homes, didn't even consider the fact that I would sell it because I needed cash. I didn't need cash because I had everything set up passively. I had so much passive income that I didn't have to worry about it. But if you're what I call working for tips, commissioned, and whatever it is, and that market goes away, and you don't have any income coming in, then I think you're going to be looking at selling off assets just like you would in the stock market or a second house or whatever it is. Just, again, trying to survive and feed your family or feed yourself or whatever it is.
So that wraps up today's show. Make sure you hit the like button. Always helps us out. We love giving you guys this content. Also, join the webinar on Wednesday with me and Jessica if you're considering doing an Airbnb. It's going to be free information. It's going to be great information. KenMcElroy.com/webinar is how you're going to sign up.
And happy Memorial Day, guys.
Yes.
Cheers.
Thank
Great
you.
chatting with you today.
Oh, and Jerry said, Casey, he is going to put the song that it is in the show notes.
All right. Thanks, Jerry. Cheers.